There's a question that sits underneath almost every conversation we have with buyers, even when nobody says it out loud. Are we actually going to use this enough to make it worth it? Or is this going to be a place that just sits empty most of the year while we pay for it? I want to answer that honestly today, because I think the honest answer, it's probably more interesting than most people expect. And I'm going to answer it with our own story, because we went through exactly this. And what actually happened, it surprised even us. Hi, welcome back. I'm Jeremy with the Guillette Group. Let's get into it. When we bought our place on Beech Mountain, here's what we actually expected. Summer use. That was the plan. Escape the Florida heat for a handful of weeks, and the rest of the year, rent it out, or at least make it available to rent and let it help pay for itself. That was a completely reasonable plan. In fact, it's the plan that a lot of our buyers start with. You buy for the season you want, and then you let the rest of the year work for you financially. Here's what actually happened. We used it multiple times that first summer, which was exactly what we expected. And then fall crept in. And fall up here, if you haven't experienced it, it has a way of pulling you back. So we came up again. Then our kids wanted to see snow, so we came up for that. Then they wanted to snowboard, so we came up for that too. Then it was spring break and a little more snowboarding, because by that point, they were also hooked. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, we realized something special. We were experiencing all four seasons again, genuinely, in a way we don't get to in Southwest Florida. And we were using this place far more than the plan ever called for. So we made a decision. We stopped renting it. Not because the numbers didn't work, but because we loved the idea of it just being there for us, for our kids, for our friends, available whenever we wanted it, without having to check a calendar or coordinate around a guest. That's not the plan we started with. It's just what happened once we actually lived it. If you're turning this over in your own head right now, wondering how this might play out for your family, go ahead and fill out our free High Country Buyers wish list. It's linked below. It walks you through how you picture using a place like this, and it's useful in a way to think through on paper before you ever look at a property. And if you want to talk through it with us directly, that's also linked below. All right, back to it. So the real question isn't usage. Here's what I've come to believe after being on both sides of this as an owner and as the person who helps other people buy. And today, I'm gonna make an exception. I won't mention any numbers. I've shared that math with you in one of my recent videos. I'll pin it here if you want to see a deeper dive into the rental math. Now, for the buyer who has the means to purchase this comfortably and use it whenever they choose, and I'm gonna do air quotes here, will we use it enough? Worry, it usually takes care of itself. It did for us. It does for most of the families we work with. Once you own the place, once it's yours, you find reasons to be there. The pull, it's real. The buyer I actually worry about, it's a different one. It's the buyer who's counting on the rental income to make the purchase work, who's banking on renting the property out to offset enough of the cost that it only pencils if the rental performs. That's a fundamentally different bet than buying a place you'll use and enjoy. And in my experience, that's usually not the winning approach. The property becomes an investment you're managing instead of a place your family loves. And if the rental income underperforms, so does the whole decision. So if you're asking yourself whether you'll use it enough, the more useful decision underneath that is actually this. Are you buying this because you and your family genuinely want it? Or are you buying it because you're hoping the numbers work out? Those are two very different purchases, even if the property is identical. Now let's talk about how life changes and why it's important to buy right. I want to be honest with you about the other side of this too, because our story, it's not the only story. I haven't seen a client set out to use a place a lot and then just stop wanting to, but I have seen life get in the way. A neighbor of ours started having health issues, used the place less and less, and eventually they sold. Another family we know, their kids got busy with sports and other activities most of the weekends. It got harder and harder for them to actually come up here. That's real. Circumstances change. Kids grow up, schedules shift, health changes, priorities move. Nobody can fully predict what their life's going to look like in 5 or 10 years. But that's exactly why buying the right property, it matters so much. Maybe more than people realize it going in. The long-range views, a great location, the kind of property that holds up on its own merits. If your circumstances change or your own usage is going to drop or it does drop, a property like that, it still holds its value. It still rents well if you need it to, and it still sells well if you need to move on. Property you bought purely because it was a good deal with none of those qualities, it's in a harder position when life shifts around you. So buy for the years you'll use it, but also Buy in a way that protects you if that changes. This isn't pessimism. This is buying smart. So, will you actually use it? Honestly, probably more than you think, especially once your kids or grandkids get a taste of snow, or you get your first quiet fall morning on a deck. That's what happened to us. It's what happens to a lot of the families we work with. But the better question to ask yourself isn't how many weeks a year. It's whether you're buying this because you want it or because you think the numbers need to work. And it's important that you're buying a property that holds up no matter what your life looks like 5 years from now. If you want help thinking through either of those questions, that's exactly the kind of conversations we have with buyers almost every week. The link to reach us is in the description. So is our free High Country Buyers wish list if you want to start working through this on your own first. If this was helpful, hit the like button, subscribe for weekly honest content about the High Country, and drop a comment. What's pulling you towards a place up here? The summers, the snow, or something else entirely? I read every single one. I'm Jeremy with the Guillette Group. We'll see you on the next one.